Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're welcome to another episode of your program, our program, The State of the Ummah. A program where we look at some of the biggest issues confronting the Muslim community, the Muslim Ummah. What are the driving factors for these issues? How do we do our part to alleviate the issues beyond complaining? Today, we'll be looking at a very, very important issue. Every civilization, the beginning of Islam and the Muslim, not different, will be driven by the quality of education, the quality of knowledge that community drives. The first set of verses revealed by Allah in the Quran were related to reading and knowledge. Iqra, Iqra. These were the starting messages that Allah gave the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to spread to the Ummah. So today we are really looking at the state of education within the Muslim community and Nigeria in particular. The Association of Model Islamic School is the umbrella body for Islamic schools, the schools that have taken up that responsibility to drive not just the Islamic, the Ibadat, the Quran knowledge of the Ummah, but also the worldly, the secular knowledge that are related with the Ummah. The Amis had a conference recently, and I'm excited that some of the benefits, some of the discussions from this are the issues we'll be looking at today. After the break, we'll be looking at what are the highlights, what are the takeaways from that conference. My name is Jibril Ibrahim, and inshallah after the break, you will be happy to meet my guests. The Muslim Ummah has been plagued by a number of challenges.
We are also being faced with the challenge of poverty.
Prof, how broken is the front home in the cause of this particular menace geography?
This issue of single parenting that is trending in our society today.
Emotionally, those who consume drugs and who are abusers of drugs,
they don't know how to deal with it.
2 months ago, we are able to rehabilitate some of them.
How ready will a typical youth, what do you need to be ready to do dawah?
It's about the passion of having the dawah. Now, if you look at the young people in the Ummah of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they have done the most magnificent things.
We discover things that are terrible.
If it is the materials of this life that actually you are eager to achieve, then I should divorce you handsome.
Welcome back. The program is still your program, The State of the Ummah. I told you before we went on the break that the Amis had a conference on the state of the Islamic education with a title making a balance between the quality of education we are delivering and the limits and the requirements of our deen. One of the keynote speakers and the lead facilitator at that program is in the studio with us today. He is none other than our brother all the way from United Kingdom. He's a consultant with Bond Consulting, Bond Limited, and he is brother Mabrur Ahmed. Mabrur, you're welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, how are you doing? How is Nigeria treating you so far?
Nigeria is treating me how Nigeria always treats me, with a smile, with good weather, good food, and a lot of friendly people. Alhamdulillah.
So tell me, you've been here for a while now, and you've interacted with the education sector, some of the key stakeholders in the Nigerian education. What's your perception of the situation of the education in Nigeria?
God has not gifted me with any of my own children yet. But I always say to my friends that if I was to ever have a child, I would send my child to Nigeria for education. And they're always surprised when I say this. And my Nigerian friends and family are always surprised when I say this as well. But the reality is this. The reason why I say it is this. There is a deep culture in Nigeria of severe discipline, and I mean this in the most possible, positive way possible. A respect for culture, a respect for understanding, a respect for, kind of society. But also at the same time, within the Islamic schools that I've seen, there is a deep care for Islam. There's a deep care for the deen. And although there are challenges, and I'm sure we're going to come into those challenges, there are also lots of benefits, and one of the biggest benefits, like I said, is the fikr that people have towards their deen. The care and attention that they take towards the deen means that, and I always believe this, that if you have enough care and attention, and even though there might be some difficulties along the way, that the care and attention will help you get over the line. Right? So that's the reason why I say I think Nigeria is the perfect solution for on an international scale. It's not the Middle East, where things are a lot more difficult and it's difficult to move around. It's not Asia, where society is sometimes bearing down. It's not Europe, and it's not the North America, where you have so many other societal influences. It's somewhere in between. Right? It's somewhere in between. And like I said to you, I think the culture of Nigeria generally is loving, and it's open, and it's friendly, and it's enjoyable, and it's vibrant. And this is part of Islam as well. The Prophet ﷺ said that charity, it can come in the form of a smile, and I see smiles everywhere. So I think if we continue with this type of endeavor, then the challenges that we have, we will be able to face them with a smile, and inshallah we'll be able to overcome them as well.
That's really encouraging, because, well, I might agree with you, because sometimes those inside might not appreciate some of the benefit they have. They don't know what the other places that we might be admiring, they don't know what they are facing there. A lot of people might be facing there. But looking at the Nigerian system, there are a lot of people that are concerned that there is like a gap or like a retrogression in some of the core values of Islam in the society in general, which the schools are supposed to help to address. There are some issues of discipline, of hard work that are eroding. That's how we feel, but you don't seem to notice that.
No, I do. Of course, I'm not going to ignore what's there, what's obvious. But what I would say is that this kind of erosion or the degradation of a moral conscience, it's not something which is specific to Nigeria alone, firstly. It's a globalized impact, right? And increasingly, Nigeria is part of the globalized world. So I don't know if it's exclusive to Nigeria. In fact, I don't believe it's exclusive to Nigeria at all. There's no way it can be. I can see children in my own community in the UK. I can see children in communities across the world where I work, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in America. It's the same thing exists. We feel it because we're local, right? Wherever you are localized, you think that it's bad there particularly. I think it's the same characteristic we're seeing everywhere. But the solution isn't always what we think the solution is. So you're saying, where there's an issue of like discipline, and there's an issue of trying to make sure that is there for sure, But what I found is that Islam did not spread because of a sword. Islam spread because of good adab, right? And if Islam is going to be part of the solution of this erosion, it's not going to come through what we know as tarbiyah, what we understand tarbiyah to mean. Tarbiyah we use as a term which means detentions and disciplining a child and correcting their behavior, but that's not what tarbiyah means. Tarbiyah is holistic, it's all-encompassing, it's being able to create the environment where people can flourish. I don't think we have the tarbiyah correct here, but that's because we're looking for something else. You're looking for discipline in a place where you need love, right? So we are always taught that we should have this kind of God-fearing approach in Islam. But I don't fear my God in the way that I love my God more. Maybe we should encourage God-loving and God-adoring. Because the fear is there, of course. We love our parents. We fear them as well, though. But do you fear them more than you love them? You fear them for sure, but you love them. The core essential is that you love them. If we can teach our children to love Allah and to love the way of His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we won't have 80% of the problem that we have.
Okay, so I think that's really important, that paradigm shift from God-fearing to really working to move closer to God and loving God,
seeking His
loving
pleasure,
the deen and seeking His pleasure and all this. But you see, like generally Nigeria is among those countries that are said to be very godly, both from Muslim and Christian activities and rituals. But yet the products, there is still fear among a lot of parents and stakeholders that there is fear that a lot of the youth that are coming The quality of education is not contemporary. The content of the curriculum is not global. It's not globally competitive. And even that hard work that is required to push things through doesn't seem, our children seem to be lazier today. There is this concept of working smart versus working hard. So these things are interpreted differently. I see working smart means dodging things. So the quality of what they are learning and their own readiness to this scares everybody, like the schools are not delivering on some of these issues.
Look, I'm not gonna defend the schools, but also I'm not gonna attack our children as well. Of course, the schools can do better. That goes without question, and we can all do better anyway, everywhere, right? It's not just schools, but every part of society can do better, without question. Yes, schools can do better. You said something which is very interesting to me. We are not producing a system of education which is competent to compete with those in the rest of the world. Is that the focus? Isn't the focus to make the country better? So first of all, do we need to compare to Western ideals? Do we need to compare to K-12 or GCSEs? What's the necessity? That means that you're looking to export your children, right? I don't believe that that's the correct way to go about it. I understand why parents might want it. I understand why schools might want it. I understand why society might want it. But my personal belief is that we can make Nigeria what you want to make it if we can encourage the children to stay here, right? To be engaged here. Now, the second question is around the idea of this concept of children being lazy. I don't think we should say those things, because I think when we're talking about children being lazy, I don't think the adults are far behind. And I think maybe we might even be leading the way, right? So children only replicate what they see from their elders. So in terms of working hard and working smart, you just have to open up social media channels and you'll see adults doing all types of crazy things to earn money and not many honest things to earn money, right? So then what do you expect your children to do? It's like a car. If you don't put petrol in, then it's not going to move. If you put water in, is it going to move?
No.
It may clean the windscreen wipers, but it's not going to move. So in terms of children, what are we putting into their minds, into their hearts, and into their souls? Because we give them a device at the age of 5, 6 years, 7 years old. We may even give it to them at 2 years old because we can't parent them effectively. So instead of sitting with them and engaging them, we put on some video which shows Baby Shark. What do you think is going to happen to that child? At the age of 15 years old for their birthday, or 16 years old for their birthday, we're buying them an iPhone 10, 11, whatever it might be, in the latest iteration of the phone. What are we giving them access to? Seriously, I think that if you're talking about moral degradation, that's where your moral degradation comes. We have this idea of Western liberalism, where all of us, in Nigeria, outside of Nigeria, we are constantly searching for how do we make money, because money is the gold standard of success, right? So this kind of liberalism, it feeds down. We ourselves as adults face this. So if we're going to be doing this, we are teaching the children to also face those things. Whereas what you're talking about is kind of having this upright Muslim child, this obedient, kind of loving, serving Muslim child for the Ummah and for the community.
Ismail kind of thing, to the way Ismail was to Ibrahim.
Right. What condition was provided for him to be able to be like that to his father? And what condition are we providing to our child for them to be like that to us? If you want that, we've got to be prepared to provide that as well, right? But also this idea of these children being like this, it's like as if it's very interesting to me that you mentioned Ismail and Ibrahim alayhi salam, because you're talking about an Islam from 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 years ago, or even at the very least, we're talking about 1,400 years ago for the Prophet ﷺ's time, or even if more closer to times when they were in the Islamic Empire, 600, 700 years ago. So we're talking about revival of Islam, revival of Islamic cultures. So on one hand, you have Western liberalism, which is we're searching for money, we have iPhones. And on the other hand, we are trying to go back to the times of the Caliphs. These two things confuse you and me, but more than that, they confuse our children. And I think that's the reason that we have some confusion in our teachings of Islam, or teachings generally with Islamic principles, because we're neither here nor there. We need to search for our identity. Where do we want to be?
This is a major shift in some of the way we see education. We'll take a break now, and this issue is getting really hot, really interesting. There is obvious need for a paradigm shift. Is it the material? Is it the value? Are we trying to export our children, or are we going to get our children to develop Nigeria? After the break, we'll continue. Welcome back from the break. Alhamdulillah, we are having the discussion with Brother Mabrur Ahmed, the lead facilitator specifically on the program of the Association of Model Islamic Schools at the last conference they had in Abuja here on balancing between the quality of education and the deen of Islam. How do we produce children that represent Islam, that represents what we want to see as an ummah? A lot of discussions has gone on in the first part. Specifically, for me, we had that issue of, are we producing children that we want to export? Or are we trying to produce children that will build the country and build the community here? So we're talking about, we know we need to produce children that should be able to build the country, that should be more effective, not just export material. And you were telling us about how to do that.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I mentioned this before the break, is that a school needs to know its identity, right? Whether or not the school is an Islamic school or a school with Islamic principles. And the difference is simple. An Islamic school is one that teaches Quran and Sunnah. And that's the basis and the entirety of its project. And then you have school with Islamic principles, which is basically teaching your Nigerian curriculum alongside maybe your British curriculum or American curriculum, or maybe just exclusively the Nigerian curriculum, which does also teach Quran and Sunnah, but really it's just a school with the fundamentals and principles and the folds of Islam being adhered to, right? So first of all, the school needs to know, what am I? Am I an Islamic school, or am I a Muslim school, say, or a school with Islamic principles? Then the parents need to decide, do I want to send my child to a place where they are going to become, an alim or something like this? Or do I want to send my child to a place where they're going to get their education, their prescribed education, but in a way where the environment is in a Muslim environment? And then the next one, which is quite controversial, is the child needs to decide whether or not they want to go to an Islamic school or a school with Muslim principles, or if they want to go to a state school or private school as well. And the reason why I say this is because it's not so necessary for primary, for nursery. Of course, they're too young to make any decisions. But by the time that a child goes to a secondary school, say 11 years old, 12 years old, Islam has a concept of something called baligh, right? And baligh means when someone becomes an adult. And the condition of baligh basically is when someone hits the age of puberty. Now, puberty normally takes place between the age of 10 to about 13, right? So you can say in that period that child has become or has matured into a position where they can make an informed decision. Now you say, for example, you send a child in year 7 where they are not quite as mature, they are not yet quite as well thought out in their mind, and they go to an Islamic school or a Muslim school or whatever you might want to call it. By the time they get to year 9, year 10, they tell you they're listening to Quran recitation on their headphones, but they're listening to Rihanna or Drake, right? They're influenced more by that than from their teacher in the school who's telling them, no, you must not do this, no, you must not do that, right? The heart's not there for the child. So you may be paying 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 naira per term. You may be telling all of your friends as a status symbol, my child goes to an Islamic school. Alhamdulillah. But what are you producing? And have you taken that child's permission? So first of all, first and foremost, we need to have identity understanding. The school needs to understand its identity, the parents need to understand the identity of what they want from their child, and the child themselves needs to understand the identity of what they're getting themselves in for. Right?
Yes, but I think you've made a clear distinction between this Islamic school and
school with
a school with other curriculum.
Yeah.
It's difficult because one of the challenges we are having is you do Islamic school, that's almost like what we call Islamia. You can't get serious economic serious paying jobs in the society without this American and British curriculum.
And this is what I'm talking about. You're talking about Western neoliberal, getting money, having a future career, versus having Islam, Quran and Sunnah, which is Islamic revivalism. And when you put them two together, it's confusing. You need to know which one do you want. Do you want to have a child? Do you want a future where your children are producing expertise in science and medicine and education and all of these types of things, who guard their Islam? Or do you want to provide, or do you want to produce ulama? Which one?
I think we more often than
you're
not
going to the neoliberal one.
That's what I think majority of the parents.
So that's what I'm saying. So a lot of this, first of all, the parents need to understand that they're sending their child to a school with Muslim principles, and the school themselves need to know that they are a school with Muslim principles. Because if they're trying to do something else with that, there's going to be confusion. And do you know where the confusion comes to and manifests itself? In the child. And when we confuse the child, the next thing that we're going to do, which is what we did at the beginning of the show, is say, you're lazy. But we are lazy because we haven't thought about it as adults, as teachers, as educators, as parents. We're not putting enough pressure, enough thought. We're not putting enough resources, time, money into thinking, how do we produce that ummah, that nation? You know, you're talking about state of the ummah. So you're talking about an ummah, a state of a nation, where we're going to be experts in every field, right? But we're going to have core Islamic values. If we're going to have that from the top level, we need to now filter it down. Our curriculum needs to show that. Our parent boards need to show that. Our uniformity needs to show that. We can't compete with each other as schools. It's got to be a combined effort. Something like AMIS, for example, needs to become recognized and dealt with as a government, kind of lobbying agency, government information providing agency, a consultancy almost, so that national policy can be directed in a particular way. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Because once you have that, then your teachers will play ball with you. And when your teachers play ball with you, eventually it will filter down to the children. But this is a long-term project, right? And it's not something that you can just throw money at. It's not something that one conference is going to fix. It's not something that me and you are going to talk about and fix. It has to be dealt with at a very serious level, on a long-term level, and we have to be patient to find those results. It's not going to happen in 5 years. It's not even going to happen in 10 years. You're talking about creating something which is a beautiful, and it in itself, that model can be an export for the rest of the world. So then other places around the world can say, I want to blend the Nigerian curriculum. That's what you should be aiming for. Not to say, oh, we'll take bits of Britain, take bits of America. We should create the education system here, which is the best of both worlds. We're not in the Middle East. We're not in Asia. We're not part of Europe. You've got everything here. The whole world has always, all empires of the world have always made their name by coming and plowing in Africa's soil. So we are Muslims. We are in Africa. We're in Nigeria. Why don't we create something that we can all be proud of? And we can export to the rest of the world. And we can even charge them because we are Western neoliberals as well. Excellent. Right?
Yeah, I think this is really, really interesting. Now let's go specifically now a bit to the AMIS. What's big advice, room for improvement, as it said, would you say you've seen that needs to be worked upon?
Not too dissimilar to what I've just said. I think that strategy needs to be worked out, and I think AMIS is the right agency, and it's the most well-positioned agency. It has 3,000 members, 3,000 member schools. That's huge. 3,000 Muslim schools are members to one body. But the body needs to now also know its identity. It needs to work as almost a union for these schools, for these teachers. It needs to also maybe start looking at how can they, rather than how can the schools benefit AMIS, AMIS now needs to think about how they can benefit the schools. So many of these schools, these 3,000 schools, or most of the Muslim schools that we have in Nigeria are not huge institutions. They don't charge millions of naira. They're small institutions in local areas where local people struggle to pay the 10,000, 15,000 naira per month or per term that might be needed. So we need to understand about those guys first. And AMIS needs to be able to provide some sort of service which allows those schools to progress to the next level up. So they're no longer struggling schools, but they are schools that really understand their identity and they have a clear roadmap of how to improve next. That's a big challenge. and it's something that needs to be done from the presidential level of AMIS downwards. But I'm also very encouraged to see that the current president, the current national secretary, the chapter heads are actually truly fantastic people. I've spent a lot of time with them in the last few days. I believe that they are 100% sincere. They have the fikr of Islam and the deen, and I really believe that they will actually make efforts. They need support. They need to be given time. Muslim schools need to do that. Parents need to do that as well. Most importantly, they need financing, right? So schools should be prepared to pay. But more than that, we need rich individuals to come along and finance projects on a huge scale like this. Because we can talk about Islam as much as we want, but we all know the future of Islam lies in our children. How much are we willing to invest? Not just money, but also effort, also time. I think that's the real question that's left with me at the end of these 3 days.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm really happy to have this discussion with you. I was in the audience yesterday, and you know, some of the people, some of the participants, I could see their appreciation for your understanding of the state of a lot of the schools and how you handled the panel. I think I might be conveying their gratitude to you for all that you have shared with us so far. Exactly. Thank you very much for coming on the show. So here we'll be wrapping up today's session. A lot has been said. A lot has been said about what makes an Islamic school and what makes a Muslim school. Are we producing ulama, people that stand up for the deen, that are driven by the values of Islam and what it means to be a Muslim? Are we producing a blend of people that are trying to get a job from the society? It's really a tough question. A lot has been said, but I think the show will be ending on the note that we really need to come together, support the Association of Model Islamic Schools, to see, because that's like the frontal organization for addressing the future of the Ummah, our children. My name remains Jibril Ibrahim. We called it a day at this point. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuhu.